Well, this was maybe the best game Chelsea have played under Enzo Maresca, and this was maybe the worst game Aston Villa have played under Unai Emery. Stylistically, Chelsea were the much better team. I don't think the game plan was that good from Aston Villa, but I also don't think it was pulled off that well. And he's on a bit of poor form, Unai Emery at Aston Villa. I don't think they've won in 7 or 8 games now. I think it is. It's starting to crumble a bit. This is the first real bleak spot of his Aston Villa career, and so questions are being asked. I think maybe a little bit too prematurely, but that is the game of football, especially in England, in English land. And, it's starting to look a little bit bleaker. They've dropped into the bottom half of the table. They've dropped a couple points in Champions League games now. That's just the pressure, I guess, that comes from managing this type of club. You can still keep faith in him. He's still a terrific manager that's done fantastically. But I thought from a game plan perspective, and I thought from execution point of view, it was terrible, really, from Aston Villa. And Chelsea, full credit to them. And I will hold my hand up and admit that I was wrong on Enzo Maresca. I also realise I haven't put Jackson's name in. I didn't think this was a good appointment when it first happened. And look, it still may not be. There's still a long way to go. But so far, I think he's handled everything really, really well. I think he's more adaptable than I'd have given him credit for. I think he sets up his game plans really well. And as I say, the quality and the levels he's getting out of the performances is more than what Poch was getting last season. But we're going to go over the Chelsea attacking phase first of all. So Chelsea would attack in their 3-4-3, and that would be with Colwill in the middle of the centre-backs, with Fofana out at right centre-back and Cucurella in a sort of hybrid left centre-back, almost left midfield type role. Lavia and Caicedo, who started the game at right back, would invert to join them in the centre. Enzo Fernandez high up in the left half space, Cole Palmer on the right, Pedro Neto and Jadon Sancho maintaining width high and wide with Jackson in the middle. And Villa's approach was passive, it was poor. And to be fair to Unai Emery, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit before I maybe have a bit of a go. I feel like he still gets this reputation of the high line of the offside trap. And I don't agree that is all he offers in the approach. His defensive line, I always feel like, is tailored off in regards to the opposition he's facing. So in the Chelsea game, they dropped off and they sat deep quite a lot. They weren't engaging at all higher up the pitch. And that is because he's worried about the threat of the pace and behind, which Chelsea have in abundance. Last week against Crystal Palace, he went high, tried to push up near enough into the halfway line and leave a lot of space in behind the defensive line, which was a poor game plan because it ended up them losing 2 points because of it. But he adapts to the opposition he's facing. Does he always get it right? No, but he's not just this highline manager that plays without regard in an offside trap. He does use a unit of a 4-4-2 well, depending on the situation. And in this game, they dropped off a lot. And if anything, they dropped off too much. And this has always been a problem. This has always been the one flaw I found in this Aston Villa team is they don't press, they don't engage, and they leave the opposition with too much time and space on the ball. And when that opposition are at a higher technical level, that is a dangerous thing to do. And as a result, it felt like the midfield 4 and the front 2 were caught in between the 2 lines. So Rodgers and Watkins are almost dropping off into Lavia and Caicedo with half a mind to engage, but never fully engage with the back 3. So they were relatively easily enough able to pull off passes, play it through the lines. Kamara and Tielemans would come up from Fernandez and Cole Palmer to sort of, again, manage space in between Caicedo and Lavia. And they never really got either. And there was no intensity in the movement between the deeper areas and the more forward areas. So, it wouldn't be that they'd stand off on Enzo Fernandez. That ball could get played into Lavia and Kamara would spring into the press. It was very passive, very slow, very laboured. And so Chelsea could play it through the thirds quite easily. Just so little pressure on the ball. There was a little bit of disorganisation in the shape of the wingers. McGinn would typically tuck in a little bit more, and whether that's because his marker would have been Caicedo, who inverted from right back, and whether Cucurella would have been Philogene, so Philogene came up to engage with Cucurella more in these areas, I don't know. The problem is that this then left space for this man, who I thought was instrumental. I thought he was excellent throughout the game. I thought he was excellent in the game against Leicester. And he's starting to show his real quality in a Chelsea shirt. Philogene coming up into Cucurella here left this space completely free, and it left Enzo Fernandez with the ability to come into the half space, to pull out wide to receive the pass from Lavia, and completely have the free rein to attack this space as he wanted. Matty Cash couldn't come and engage with him because he was due to mark Jadon Sancho, would have him pinned back. And Kamara didn't want to stray too far from Tielemans because the front 4 would generally be pretty narrow. It would be to try and block off that centre area. So he couldn't risk spreading too far wide, leaving a massive gap in that centre area, especially when Lavia and Caicedo was getting as much time and space on the ball as they were. So Enzo Fernandez could receive it out wide. That would then force the reaction of camera of Philogene dropping into him to try and take the ball off of him. But he got so much free reign to attack this space, driving it forward, maybe looking for the run of Jackson, who could make a near post run, finding Sancho off the back of Matty Cash, and occasionally Mark Cucurella making the overlapping or underlapping run that he could find with his passes. And he would be tracked by Philogene. As the half went on, Philogene ended up more into a right back position or a right centre back position, depending on Cucurella's movements, to try and help out that area. A little bit too little, too late. They were getting carved open enough in that area. And it also maybe would be with Enzo Fernandez making that pass into Sancho, Cash coming across wide, and Enzo Fernandez coming into that space to receive the ball from 1-2 and create from these areas. Camara would have to track him as well into these areas, which he did in the more advanced areas. He did manage to cover that space between centre back and full back a couple times, but it still caused danger. It still opened up space, and as a result, Chelsea got openings all half down that side. And it shows that there is another added level of quality to this team from Chelsea, because Cole Palmer is the danger man. He's been arguably the best player in the league this season, but they couldn't really find him with passes in that first half. He didn't really see a lot of the ball because of the narrow positioning of John McGinn. So that passing lane was cut up, and they still find ways to hurt you. They still found ways to cause issues and get chances and create chances. Also, even if Camera had come across into this area to Enzo Fernandez, Nick Jackson would end up showing as the shorter option in this area to receive the ball from Lavia or the deeper players. It would then cause Torres or Konza to press reactionarily. Reactionarily, is that a word? I'm making up all kinds of things today. To try and stop them from happening. But again, Chelsea always found a solution to that midfield shape. There was always an extra man there that they could use to overwhelm and overload these areas, get on the turn and play either into that half space or a little pass out here that can get the ball out wide as Villa's shape would then narrow up, creating the wider option. And Lavia, because of the passive approach, was given so much time and space on the ball, and he has such technical quality that he could find passes into the centre, or I say in that gap. If Philogene left it a little bit to expose some of his passing into this area, was fantastic. Enzo Fernandez being allowed to influence the game far too much in this area, very little pressure being applied on him, and they get their 3 goals. But they also defended excellently, and I still feel like this is something this team gets criticised for, so we'll go over how they did that. So Chelsea's pressing shape and their defensive structure, I thought, was excellent. I thought it was near enough perfect in the way they implemented it, and it was near enough complete man-to-man, except for one segment, which we'll talk about. Jackson would press onto Konza, Sancho onto Matty Cash, Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer would press onto Tielemans and Camara, who would drop in a little bit deeper. They'd be quite central, so it was easy for Fernandez and Palmer to press and not leave space away from themselves. Cucurella onto Philogene. Fofana with Watkins and Colwill coming up into Morgan Rogers into this area. He would engage him high up. If Rogers dropped deep to get on the ball here, Colwill would follow him up. Did a fantastic job on him. A couple of times early on that Rogers spun him and created chances, but I'd say Colwill came out largely victorious. Where it was slightly different was on this left-hand side for Aston Villa. We know how they like to play. They like to have Digne starting off a little bit deeper and then move into a more advanced position to allow McGinn or whoever the left winger is to come into the half space. So, initially, it would be with Pedro Neto dropping in a little bit on Luca Dean, with Caicedo on McGinn, and Lavia just sort of played a bit of a shielding role, especially on this right-hand side. Torres was essentially the free man. Martinez was also left on the ball. They didn't really get drawn into Martinez too much. The only time it would happen on occasion is if there felt like there was a counter-pressing opportunity and Jackson would come in from Konza, shielding that passing lane and press Martinez aggressively. Jackson's pressing throughout the match I thought was brilliant. Quick, instant, and I say just so aggressive. And the way that Chelsea would respond, and they'd respond excellently, is if this pass went into Pau Torres here, that would be the trigger for Neto to quickly and aggressively come up from Digne to get close to him, to press him, and try and win the ball back as quick as possible. Caicedo would then move on to Digne, with Lavia coming across to McGinn. So then it would become completely man-to-man. Having Lavia as that extra man to respond in these situations just allowed that right-hand side to move and force an issue. There was the odd time where Villa did manage to get an opening with, let's say, just that transitional moment of players going to press from their positions. Could they just lose a runner? And they did a couple of times where Digne got 3 on the left-hand side where he managed to beat the run of Caicedo. But largely this worked. They just couldn't cope with the intensity. So as a result, this pressing structure worked more often than not. It was so aggressive, so intense, and you've got to credit the team, you've got to credit Maresca for that. The only way that Villa were able to break out, which I noticed, was if the ball here came to Yuri Tielemans and Palmer switched off for just a second, which he has the ability to do. He can lose concentration a bit. is that Tielemans has a fantastic quality of being able to produce a half-turn pass where he's not even facing the play, but he can just take a quick touch out of his feet to his side and smash one over his shoulder into this area. And so there was the odd time where he could swing it over to Philogene, who has the pace to break lines, but Cucurella matched him up well. Aggressive as hell, Cucurella. I'm still not completely convinced on him as a fullback, I have to say. I know there's people that say he's having a bit of a redemption. Look, he's nowhere near as bad as he has been for Chelsea, but he has one setting, and that is tenacious. And when it works, it looks fantastic. But he doesn't defend one-on-one well enough at all, I don't think. I think once he comes against a player that's got a little bit of extra dynamism and quality to their dribbling, they can sucker him into just making an aggressive movement or an overly enthusiastic challenge. But with the lack of experience of Philogene, Cucurella was able to win that battle. And he's having a good season. I'm not going to criticise him. I just think he gets a little bit overrated with how needlessly Wile E. Coyote he is. So that did happen a few times. Tielemans was able to get a pass away. Never really led to anything. Or Ollie Watkins could pull off the back of Fofana because of Caicedo going to press Digne. This then meant he could create a bit of separation and look for the ball over the top from Martinez or a deeper player if they got just time to knock it long in this area. And to be fair, he did beat Fofana a couple times with his pace and with his movement, and Fofana not really defending him excellently. Where he let himself down, Watkins, was when he got into the box. His finishing was really, really poor. This was one of those Ollie Watkins games where he just could not seem to connect with the ball at all. And as a result, no goal for Villa. But he did get a couple openings, and it is important to say that. He did win that battle with Fofana, but then lost it with Sanchez. Then Chelsea, to be fair, still defended well when they would push back into a deeper phase, as we'll demonstrate now. It's a Villa would push up into the shape they generally play with in the attacking areas, and that's a 3-box-4 wide 3. Digne pushing forward from left back to be the left winger, essentially. Matty Cash tucking into form back 3, and Rodgers and McGinn in the half space. Chelsea, again, still matched it up relatively man for man, with Neto dropping back into a right back, right wing back position to take care of Digne, to allow Caicedo to move in a little bit more narrow and to make sure McGinn didn't get the space in the half space. Fofana and Colwood could still go man to man on their men while retaining structure, while retaining shape. Fernandes and Lavia would drop in a little bit more as Palmer and Sancho would look to sort of mark a bit more zonally in these aspects, with Tielemans and Kamara as the deeper two, Jackson sitting behind them. Where this was a lot more different than Villa's shape was, I spoke before about how passive Villa were and how, they were so unwilling to engage in the press. Opposite for Chelsea, when the ball would go from, say, Camara back to Cash, they would spring, they would jump, and they'd be aggressive. This was the trigger. Sancho would jump up onto Cash. Jackson would go up to Konza. Palmer would quickly spring to Torres. Lavia and Fernandes backing up onto Camara, and Tielemans with the defensive line moving up to their markers. So they'd sit passive. They'd block the passing lanes into the more advanced players in general possession. When there was a trigger, when there was a pass backwards, when there was a poor touch, they'd engage. And Villa would end up having to go back to Martinez constantly when they got into these more attacking areas. The difference in attitude, the difference in aggression was paramount and displayed mostly in the defensive shapes as opposed to the attacking shapes. And Chelsea just didn't let Villa get high. They couldn't find space to play into, and then they were pressed aggressively in the right moments. So fantastic from Chelsea, fantastic from Maresca, and you've got to give them credit. And they're definitely a team that I think has shocked me and probably shocked a lot of people watching them this season. I didn't expect them to be this good. Can they get top 4? It's a long old season and there's a lot of competition for that place, but they've got as good an opportunity as any other team. So who knows? We'll wait and see. But thank you guys for watching. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below and tell me why either way. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. In a bit, lads.